If you're a friend of the channel, you already know October has been a big month for me. Welcome back to Mad on Books, where I talk about fantasy mostly, science fiction sometimes, and comics occasionally. October was the month that I restarted the channel. Yay! After a very long hiatus from BookTube, I came back. I made a couple of videos already about that. You can go back and look at them if you want. And I got back into reading. I was in my hiatus reading far less than I usually do, or than I have been for the last year or two anyway. And I got back to that. So what did I read this month? I've already mentioned it. I read, not just this month, I've kind of been slowly working on it, I guess, for a couple of months. Le Morte d'Arthur. It is the Ur Arthur story. It is maybe also a very foundational fantasy story. It's not at all a historical fiction. At least this Arthur story is not. It's very much a fantasy. There is magic. There are weird beasts and monsters and things going on. It's definitely more of a fantasy than it is a history. It's also written in a very short story kind of a way. It's a bunch of chapters that do flow kind of continually through the book, but they're not separate short stories, but there will be a group of 10 chapters that are primarily about one particular knight doing a particular thing. And when he's finished that, something else comes up and somebody else maybe goes and does something. It doesn't have a main character who is all the way through the story. I mean, of course, in the background, there's Arthur and Lancelot and Gawain and all of that, but it's very much a thing you can pick up and read a few chapters and put down, and you don't really lose where you were or get confused about anything. It's also, I always find it really funny, written by Sir Thomas Malory. Malory spoils every chapter at the beginning. So it'll have a chapter number, and then it'll have a sentence which basically tells you what happens in the chapter. How Sir Tristram met with Sir Lamorak de Galis, and how they fought, and after accorded never to fight together. That also makes it easy to follow because every chapter you know what's going to happen before it does. And it was written in the 15th century, so the language is a little bit harder. And occasionally there's vocabulary that you might not know or anything like that. But if you're relaxed about that kind of thing, I highly recommend it, if only because it is such a foundational kind of work of fantasy. Then, this is my embarrassment and shame of the month. Not that I read Citadel of the Autarch, which is the fourth book in the Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe, but that I read it primarily because I was going to be in a discussion with Philip and Jared and Paul. As we had done in the past, I had one on my channel, Philip had a couple on his channel. We had done these discussions, and I came back to BookTube just in time to join the last discussion on Citadel of the Autarch. This is 2 books in one, so it's Sword of Lictor and Citadel of the Autarch. I read it. I really enjoyed it. Book of the New Sun is really weird. A lot of it feels very dreamlike. There's a lot of symbolism and stuff going on, and there's a lot of stuff that doesn't feel that explained. Even at the very end, there are still a lot of open questions where you can theorize yourself, but it's not laid out 100% clear for you. If you are okay with uncertainty, if you can deal with not knowing everything that's going on, which I think is kind of our experience of normal life pretty much all the time, then you may love this. It's kind of fantasy. It's kind of science fiction. Gene Wolfe himself called it science fantasy. It's in a future where people have pretty much forgotten a lot of their technology. So there are a lot of little hints and suggestions around the place. When you start thinking about it, you're like, oh, they think that thing is magic and it's actually technology. Or they think that thing is something just because they've forgotten what it used to be, what it was when it was high technology. There are aliens. There is a whole bunch of weird shit going on and a bunch of coincidences which turn out to not really have been coincidences after all. Amazing books. This was a third read for me. The shame and embarrassment part of it, when it came to the day for the discussion, I was tired at 5 p.m. We were meant to start recording at 8 or 7, I think. So I decided to take a nap, and I set an alarm, and I somehow turned the alarm off and slept until 9:30. When I woke up and found a couple of messages from Philip saying, "Hey, where are you? Is everything okay?" So I'll link to that discussion, which was actually awesome. I just watched it today, but I wasn't in it. Then, in anticipation of continuing my reread of The Realm of the Elderlings, I read The Wilful Princess and the Piebald Prince, which was actually a first read for me. All of The Realm of the Elderlings I've read except the last trilogy and the side stuff. So the short stories that are in The Inheritance and this one, which is a novella. As you can see, it's quite tiny. And this gives you a lot of background, which fits really well, fits really well in between Live Ships and the Tawny Man trilogy, which is what I'm reading now. If you haven't read Live Ships or even the Farseer trilogy, I wouldn't recommend reading the Tawny Man trilogy without having read Farseer, at least, because that's where you get to know the character. But this story you can read on its own, but it's actually, or for me, it was quite useful to read it right before going into Tawny Man, because there's a lot that goes on in Tawny Man. One of the big themes and big plot points in the story has a lot to do with this novella. So reading this gives you a lot of interesting sort of historical and background knowledge. And I really enjoyed it. It wasn't super engaging and engrossing the way that a lot of Hobbs novels are, but it also took an afternoon to read, so no harm done. And it really is a useful bit of background for everything else that comes in the Tawny Man, and I assume later as well. Then I read what has turned out to be my book of the month, Something Wicked This Way Comes. By the pricking of my thumbs, Something Wicked This Way Comes, by Ray Bradbury. It's a book I already talked about a lot. I only really do a review when I'm like, everybody should read this book. I really, really am excited to recommend this book. And I already did a review of this. This is the first review since I've been back. I'll link to it. So I won't say too much about this, just that it was spooky as fuck and super touching. Lots of kid stuff, like being a teenage boy stuff, lots of dad shit, as Mike likes to say. Family getting back together, kind of finding themselves. Some really deep psychological stuff without being overbearingly obvious about it being deep psychological stuff. It's such a good book. Everybody should read this. I will reread this. I don't know when, but it's one of those books that immediately went on my I will eventually reread this list. And right now, I'm reading Fool's Errand. I didn't finish it in October. I'm really close though. You can see I've only got, 50 pages to go maybe. This is the beginning of the Tawny Man trilogy, the third trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings 16-book series, which I'm rereading. It's just as engrossing as everything else so far has been. I've really enjoyed it. I've really trucked through it. Now that I think about it, I think I just started reading this on the 31st of October, or maybe actually even the 1st of November. But it's what I'm reading now. Really good start. I've read this before, so I'm not surprised by anything really, but I'm loving it. I haven't done a book haul in a long time, but I just realized, maybe just with the excitement of getting back on BookTube and getting back into reading and getting back in touch with all of my booktube friends and all of that. I've just been excited, and I've expressed that in spending money, maybe. I won't waste too much time on it because there are books I haven't read, so I can't say too much about them. But I bought the complete H.P. Lovecraft. He's famous for two things. One is being an absolute racist asshole in his life. The other, though, is writing cosmic horror and kind of founding the whole idea of cosmic horror, along with some other people like Clark Ashton Smith and who else. This is theoretically everything he wrote, like all of his major tales. It's what I call a cheap special edition. It's not really a special edition at all, but it's done to feel a bit more special than normal. It's got debossed typography on the cover. I don't know if you can see that. And Cthulhu's eyes are debossed as well, which is kind of weird. It's got a lot of gold. It's got a bookmark ribbon. And the interior is nothing too special, but it's got all of his stuff. I've wanted to read some Lovecraft for a long time. I've read Call of Cthulhu a long time ago. I don't know if you can see it, but back there on my shelf, I actually have the role-playing game called Call of Cthulhu. I've played Call of Cthulhu with Sandy Peterson, who is the guy who created it, and I've never read much Lovecraft. So I'm very familiar with it. It's gone sort of into the geek mainstream consciousness, like the Cthulhu mythos and the idea of cosmic horror, but I've never really read it. So I want to catch up on it sometime. I heard Josh from Red Fury Books talking on somebody's channel, and I can't remember who it was. And he was talking and kind of gushing a little bit about Raymond E. Feist. So I bought what's this called? The Rift War? Or is the whole thing called the Rift War? Anyway, this is the first trilogy in the Rift War series. I read these back as they came out, which I think was in the 80s or early 90s, but I think it might have been in the 80s. Magician, Silverthorn, and A Darkness at Sethanon. I remember them being really good. It wasn't the first wizard school ever, but it predates Hogwarts by quite a lot. And it goes from being a wizard school kind of thing into being a portal fantasy kind of thing where two worlds connect and ends up being quite a difficult connection. And I just remember them being really good. I don't remember that many details, but I thought rereading these might be fun. These two I'll put together because they're the same author and the same reason that I bought them. Ursula K. Le Guin, some of her science fiction, The Dispossessed and The Left Hand of Darkness. I saw Jared Henderson talking to Philip Chase, and he was saying, I can't remember which one, I think he said The Left Hand of Darkness is one of his favorite books ever, and he highly recommended both of these. I've read Earthsea by Le Guin, not all of it. I've read Wizard of Earthsea for sure, and I think I might have read Tawanu or whatever it's called. Sorry. But I've never read any of her science fiction. And I do have a kind of an urge to get back into a bit more science fiction, especially the good old science fiction. So I picked up both of these. And last but not least, another recommendation from Jared Henderson. He said something, I think also when he was talking to Philip Chase, he said something about the Stoic philosophy and Marcus Aurelius and all of that. And one of the things they were talking about was that a lot of people have an idea about Stoicism, and Stoicism is like based on Marcus Aurelius's writing, but a lot of the people that have an idea about it, and especially a lot of the dude bros who have a real sort of macho idea about it, don't actually know what it is, and are saying a lot of things that Marcus Aurelius never wrote. So I thought that was interesting because I don't know if I describe myself as a dude bro. I don't have any interest in sports ball, but I also have realized I have a concept about Stoicism, and it's based on nothing. I mean, nothing concrete based on hearing things and whatnot. So I bought a nice little edition of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which also has a nice little bookmark ribbon and sort of a bit more interesting than normal cover. And it's also a really sort of cute, handy format. I don't know what to expect. I'm really interested to read this because I really don't know what to expect. I've heard so many things about Stoicism and Aurelius and this book, and many of them may not be true at all, apparently. So I'm really looking forward to reading this, sort of probably on and off. I don't think it's the kind of book that I will focus on and just read straight through. And it's broken up into, maybe you can see that, it's broken up into very short kind of statements. It was apparently Marcus Aurelius's sort of journal, just him writing down thoughts. So really curious on that one as well. So what else has gone on in October? Well, I'm glad you asked. The biggest thing, obviously, for the channel is I restarted the channel in October. Yay! I realize now that I really missed it. And I wanted to say to all of you out there watching, who've left comments, who've gotten in touch with me somewhere, who've been on the Discords and commented, I've received so much kind and loving feedback since I explained why I was gone. I really, really appreciate it. And now that I'm back, I realize I missed recording videos. I even missed editing videos. I actually quite enjoy editing. And most of all, I missed you, the people in the comments, the other booktubers I've made friends with. It has been a heartwarming experience returning to BookTube. So to all of you, thank you. The other huge thing in October, not so much for the channel, but definitely for me, was I adopted a cat. This is Fitz. That's right, Fitz. Fitz is actually female, but she doesn't speak human, so I don't think she understands that her name is a male name, so it'll be okay. But I couldn't resist naming my pet after one of my favorite fictional characters. Fitz is getting used to the flat still. She peed on the sofa 3 times until I figured out that she really, really hates scented cat litter. That problem is solved now. She goes in the box, no problem, as long as there's no scent on the cat litter. She's really, really sweet. She doesn't bite. She doesn't scratch. She's not so much of a lap cat, but she likes being around me, people in general. Really, really, really sweet cat. And I've already noticed how good it is for my own mental health, living alone, having an animal around. So I'm really, really enjoying Fitz. And I think she's enjoying me and the flat as well. Other than that, before this video, I put out 3 videos in October. One explaining why I was gone, one talking a little bit about what I might be doing next, and one book video, a review of Something Wicked This Way Comes. And I've really been enjoying it. I've been keeping up with the once a week schedule, even twice a week when I put out a review. And so far, I'm just enjoying it. I'm mood reading. I'm picking up whatever the hell I want when I want. And that seems to suit me just fine. The other thing I've done is Sundays I've had sort of a BookTube pub hangout is what I'm kind of thinking of it as. I had one where a whole bunch of different booktubers joined me, just sort of randomly. I invited 10 or 15 or 20 people, and 5, I think 6 showed up, and we just hung out and talked about books with a bunch of people in the comments. And then I did a reading sprint thing. I want to make these a regular thing. I like, just for my schedule, Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, my time afternoon in America seems to be a good time. It's kind of a nice way to end the weekend. And I just like opening up a live stream and offering it to anybody who wants to join. And this time, I really mean anybody. So from now on, my channel on the Grimoire Discord, every Sunday will have a link to watch the live chat, but also to join. And you are welcome and invited to join no matter who you are. You don't have to be BookTube famous, a booktuber. You don't have to have your own channel for anything. If you're a friend of the channel and you are interested in having a face-to-face or at least voice-to-voice chat, I would heartily invite you to join. So the link to the Discord is in the description. That will take you straight to my channel, Mad on Books, on the Grimoire Discord server. And you're very, very welcome to join any of the Sunday pubs. See you there, hopefully. The other thing which I've already talked about is we had a live ships chat, the second trilogy in the Realm of the Elderlings 16-book series. As I record this, that is coming up tonight. But when you see this, that will have been last night. So if you missed it, you can go back and have a look at it. The other thing that happened in October is I was really thinking, I want to, even though I'm trying not to make too many long-term plans, I do want to reread Lord of the Rings. And I've been wanting to play with the vlog, video log format. So I think I'm going to do a vlog rereading Lord of the Rings. I'm reading it from a certain perspective. I read it when I was 9. I am now 54 almost. And I've read it, I don't know how many times. I've seen the movies a number of times. And I'm really interested to see how it is, because it's been maybe a decade since the last time I reread it. And I'd like to share the experience with you folks. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be doing an announcement video when I'm really going to start that. Might take a little while, but it's in my head and it's coming up soon-ish. So as usual, I hope you are well. I hope you're really well. I hope you're reading awesome books like I have this month. And I will see you next time.